Okay, feet about hip width apart as always. Then just nice and relaxed. Turn in the center of your body. A couple of nice, slow, deep breaths. Give yourself time. There's always a bit of sort of like stepping in and shuffling around. That's quite normal. Remember, you want your weight to come a little bit forwards, your hips drop back. The weight of your arms on your shoulders. And then just raise your arms a little. Slowly let your hands drop down. Come to a halt. Let your weight begin to rock forwards and backwards. Just a little on your feet. So, I mean, by now, hopefully, you're all familiar enough with the postures and the feelings that you're looking for, so that you just naturally adjust. But again, there'll be little moments when it's not quite working. It feels like your whole body is sort of tilting from your ankles. So if you soften in your knees a little bit, you'll feel as you go forward, there's very slight adjustments around your hips, pelvis, lower back in particular. Elsewhere in your body as well, but the principal part of the body that's going to keep you stable is going to be the actual mechanics of it, rather than the registering of your alignment. It's going to be in that center part of your body, and then your hands out to your sides, going forwards, swaying in the river. So imagine you're leaning forwards into water, just letting your weight come forwards a little bit, and then back into water. The image effectively becomes an instruction to your body. I think one of the roots, if you like, for progression in Tai Chi, one of the things that gradually develops over the years of practice, is in this use of imagery, offering instructions and ideas to your body, feeling your body respond to those, observing how your body responds. What is it your body's doing? Don't sort of think, oh, I'm going to bend my knees and this, that, and the other one. But rather just trust, if you want to drink, you'll go to the tap. You won't think, well, I've now got to use that muscle to lift my arm up or whatever. It's the same idea. Your bodies respond to these instructions from your mind, these images from your mind. But observe how it's following that. And after a while, we get to distinguish what's useful and what isn't. Through this process of observation, we actually improve the movement by thinking, well, hold on, if I do that more, or if I can just sort of loosen my knees or my shoulders or something like that. So the movement becomes the teacher, shall we say. This time, as you come forwards, just let your weight settle behind the balls of your feet, sinking down and pushing. So it's sometimes, people sometimes ask quite reasonably about kind of more advanced exercises, more complicated exercises, and that certainly is something that happens in Tai Chi. There are the more complicated ones, but it isn't the only aspect of development. Taking an exercise that you've done many times and finding new elements in it is very important in the whole art. And then change into the wild goose. And that observation and that process is both something that comes out of the deeper focusing, the deeper attention that we pay, and something that reinforces it as well, because obviously that observation, that awareness that grows, becomes more and more subtle, in a way more and more difficult to achieve. Now change into Heart in the Clouds. So it's quite difficult to maintain that focus, and with something like Tai Chi, the focusing is multi-dimensional almost. It's not just one image that we use. It's not just one thing that we're trying to focus on, but the picture becomes more and more complex as our attention goes deeper. Now go back to the first one, rooting down. Let's do them as a little sequence of 3 movements to begin with. So we feel the movement rising progressively through our body. You can reinforce that, you may, again, I'll show you from the side. But the first one, our attention is sort of primarily focused, but not exclusively focused, on the belly and the lower back. And then when you come up, you can, if you're stable enough, just come up on your heels just a little bit. And you feel that round about the solar plexus, the lower part of the chest. And then we feel the same, belly, solar plexus, and up into the upper reaches of the body, upper part of the chest. So on and so forth. It follows the same sort of route that we use when we look at our breathing, expanding first in belly, then in the solar plexus, then in the upper chest. It also brings our attention to these different regions of the body, sometimes referred to as the Dantian. Dantian means field of energy, field of elixir. And there's three, lower, middle, and upper. So it's easy enough to remember, isn't it? Don't get too caught up with exactly where they might be. There are different versions of this, and different people will locate them in different ways according to what they're doing. And this is very much a case of observe where the movement is producing a response in your body. Follow that. So just one more time. So when we put them together into three like this is based on an exercise called balancing or harmonizing the three Dantians. And then changing. You can still feel that same movement up through those different regions of your body. And now pushing in four directions. and then circling palms. It's comfortable at the turn. And switch sides. And then again, turn. Now, row in a boat in the middle of the lake. One more time. And so the term that I used earlier, the Dantian, should always bear in mind with all of these terms that we come across in these arts, that many of them have been around for a long time. In the case of the Dantian, it's probably for something like 2,000 years. So any kind of definition of what they mean has to be seen in that context. You know, like all languages, Chinese language has changed over the years, the meaning of words has changed, and there's always problems with translations and incomplete documentation and so on and so forth. So the rough sort of guide I gave you to the regions of the body there was very rough. In some circumstances, it might be appropriate to define where the Dantians were much more precisely than that. But then a friend of mine a few years ago was interviewing a Taoist priest who came over to this country from China for Tai Chi magazine, and asked a question which is often asked: so where is the Dantian, referring to the lower Dantian? Where is it exactly? Because this is debated. And the guy looked at him and said, "Where would you like it to be?" So a lot of it is down to the mind. in terms of that particular exercise, balancing the three danshens, I think it's useful to think of these three regions of the body. That's an idea that is reflected in Chinese medicine with one of the so-called organs called the triple heater. It's not really an organ, but rather a series of processes that are concerned with, I suppose you call it, the homeostatic balance, the regulation of the body, you know, kind of squaring things up, if you like. And it's quite a good exercise. It's one that I often use early in the morning as a way of bringing my attention into these three regions of the body, very gently and with a sense of connection there. So it's quite a useful one to remember. It's based on the exercise balancing the three danshens, which inevitably there's a number of different versions. I've come across, I think, 3 or 4 different versions, including the one that I showed you. I've chosen to do it this way because this way is much easier for you to do, because you know the 3 movements. You haven't got to learn a new movement, which can be quite useful sometimes, but can also be a bit baffling. And it actually gives you a chance to practice it without thinking, oh God, was it this or was it that? Because it's 3 very familiar movements. So have a go at it, and we'll take it a little bit further soon, because I think there's some interesting ways of playing around with it. So that was rooting down the wild goose and passing crowns, just linking them together. See how it feels when you join them, with this sense of as you build. It sometimes reminds me of watching the tide come in by the sea, because it doesn't just come in and go out. It sort of comes in and then the waves recede, and then they go a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, and so on. And back to your hip width stance, and this time just going from side to side, sinking down. So it's not easy to see from the front, but it's not this. I'm not locking my leg. In fact, you can see it's probably throwing my posture out. What I need to do is this. I want to drop down. What you can do, we're going to go into bear play. So you can come up a little bit in the middle and down. I'm exaggerating this, but imagine that curve. If you see that it's there and down. And as you come across into your left or your right, you turn in that turn. Again, I'm exaggerating a little bit. Not a lot though. With this, as I've said before, with this exercise, it has this kind of, you know, flowing quality, nice and loose in your back. You know, just feel your back moving a little bit, and then your arms coming into the movement. So this is very much one of those exercises where we push at the boundaries of the movement a little bit. Not so much that it breaks the flow of it. Then the arms are coming over. So imagine your hand being on the pedals of a bicycle. There's a little bit of a swagger in the movement. Just try and keep your weight down through your hips. So you actually give your back and your spine in particular a chance to move a little bit. Then overextend your arms. They go out a little bit, but your elbows might bend. You can just let your shoulders roll a little bit, but the impetus, the energy, very much coming from the legs. bear play. More accurately, I should say it's part of bear play. I did actually learn this as bear play, but then I came across inevitably something else called bear play that included movements like this, but had a considerable number of other movements. So we'll do one more on each side. Now I'm going to change over into hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. So my right hand's gone down. I'm going to turn the opposite way to the right. That draws the hand back, a sink down in the right leg, and then across to the left, hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. Now, we're being a little bit more accurate here. Well, not accurate's the wrong word. Less of a swagger, more concerned with maintaining the alignment of the body, not turning too far. But still with that same sense of movement, especially your back and the spine. It's important to feel that the back and the spine are quite soft, quite strong, because obviously it's important part of the body for supporting the upper part of the body. It also contains the central nervous system. There's some important blood vessels and energy channels associated with that part of the body. Any tightness there will certainly have a detrimental effect on those. I want you to be able to feel the muscles of your back working but not straining. Okay, one more on each side. Bring your weight to the middle. Straighten up your feet because they've probably got a little bit out of line doing that. And then stretch in between heaven and earth. When you do this, I'm going to come a little bit closer, so probably won't be able to see all of it, but here, see how the palms of my hands face each other, they slide past, and then the top hand turns, so they're actually pushing up towards the ceiling. And keep going. The hand is slightly curved, so not stiff, but that sort of slight curve. It's time to begin to move your weight. You move across to the side of the hand that's pushing upwards. Try not to do that. As I was leaning over. This time, raise your opposite heel. A little bit more of your weight dropping into the supporting leg. And then, as always with this one, just be careful about the progression of it. Take it to whatever point is comfortable for you today. But you raise your toes, bring the foot in. And then again, if it's comfortable for you, just raise foot. Dropping down a little bit in the middle, just careful with your knees. Really use the dropping down and the movement into your foot to focus your attention into the foot. Then your body just contracts in. You go into the opposite side and expand out from that point in the foot. One more time. Now bring your feet back parallel. Again, straighten them up. Hold your hands over your chest. And then mirror my movements with your right hand, push out. You're going to come a bit closer so you can see. Your left hand pulls back like you're drawing a bow, like a bow and arrow. Now either have your elbow out to the side or tuck back. I prefer the tucking back, but it can be done either way. Try both ways. And then swing the extended hand around over to the opposite side as far as you can without straining your shoulder and back to the chest. And then the same thing on the other side. This is, for obvious reasons, an exercise called the archer. And some of you will be familiar with this. If it's comfortable for you, just turn your head, watch the hand going away. So your eyes are focused on your hand here as it comes across. And as it gets in nearer, of course, you'll be changing the focus. So it's said to be good for the muscles around your eye that are concerned with the focusing. Same thing there. Just be careful you don't tighten up in your neck. Again, there are things that we can add into this. At the moment, we're just settled in with the weight, 50% in each leg. We're going to take a slightly wider stance. And there's different ways you can play with this exercise. Some people like to drop down more when they draw the bow, come up a little bit. Again, if you do that, be careful of your knees. The version I particularly like is this one where, as I push out with my left hand, your right hand, I actually move into my right leg, and then I come around, and as my hands come to the middle, I come back to the center. And then, of course, it's the other way. That's why I've taken a slightly wider stance. That brings my legs actively into the movement. So the archer. Very good exercise for the upper body, particularly chest, ribs, shoulders. more time. And both the archer and the earlier exercise, stretching between heaven and earth, come from the set called the 8 strands of the brocade, or the 8 precious cloths. A very popular Qigong sequence, eight movements, of course. Like all these sequences, there's a lot of chopping and changing around. You find similar or the same exercise turning up in different places. And like a lot of them, they've evolved over the years. I do sometimes refer to the 8 strands of the brocade as the 8,000 strands of the brocade, because there seem to be so many variations between one and another. And I've come across loads of different versions of some of the exercises in 8 strands of the brocade. Those two are about my favorite from that set, I think. And I think both of them are quite nice, because you've got this sense that you can just make it a little bit, once you got used to the exercise, you just go a bit further, make it a little bit more difficult. I did come across one version of the archer which involved, I can't quite remember, but you get to here and then come across and you'd have to scoop down. And supposedly that was scooping another arrow off the ground to load into your bow and things like that. I didn't bother learning that one properly, but you see what I mean. These things are often sort of like changing and evolving. They should be changing and evolving. 1 foot forwards now. Transferring your weight. So both stretching between heaven and earth, and the arch. In fact, all of those exercises, because of the movement of the weight and the way that they actually have things happening, if you like, where the weight is settling. So in the case of hitting the ball in front of the shoulder, for instance, you settle and then you turn, and so on and so forth. And that emphasizes the sense of settling and rooting down through one leg, of being what we call in Tai Chi single weighted. Well, it's part of what single weighted means. It's not a stopping, it's not a static thing. And the term most commonly used, I suppose the most useful term, is that one leg is full. In other words, the leg is full with your weight, whilst the other leg is empty, or emptier perhaps. So full and empty is a useful way to think of distinguishing between the 2 legs. And in this position, with the weight back, the front leg is the empty leg, you raise your toes, and then you go forwards, the back leg is now the empty leg, you raise your heel. So Tai Chi will always have this change, this interplay between full and empty, up and down, forwards and backwards, different ways of interpreting. The generic Chinese terms are yin and yang, or yin yang is one word. That's a way of thinking of it. It's always about harmonizing. I talked about the triple heat of regulating, harmonizing. It's not one thing or another, but rather everything coming together. And then stepping in. Good, and on the other side. I think in a way the term single weighted and its opposite, which is double weighted, are quite awkward. It implies that the weight is always fully on one leg, but of course it's not. It's only really when you're doing the stepping. Single weightedness implies a fluidity, a movement. again, there's that wave-like quality. Raising your toes and your hips. One line from one of the old writings on Tai Chi says that the energy flows like the oceans of the world, that sort of sense of constant movement. Stepping in. And then either forwards or backwards, depending on where your room is. Taking a few steps. And you haven't changed direction already this time. And back. Okay. 1 foot forwards, hands on your belly. Pigeon spreads its wings. Another set of terms associated with this overall concept of yin yang is open and close. And I think that's quite an apt one for this exercise. As you go forward, you get this nice sense of just opening up, expanding outwards, and then drawing back. And if you pay attention, you'll see that actually as you open in the front of your body, you close in the back, and then as you close in the front, you open in the back. So there's this dynamic, this movement, this flow within your body from front to back. You could almost imagine it as water pushing from your back into your front and causing the expansion, and then a little push from your leg pushes the water into your back, and your whole body follows as a consequence. The pigeon spreads its wings. One more. So we come back. We feel that closing in the chest. Keep your weight back, but just feel that same opening in the chest. As you do that, just roll your arms out and go forwards. And then this is the opposite way around, isn't it? So the chest closes and then opens as you go forwards and then backwards, opposite in the back. None of these things are fixed in one way. It's not always the case that when the chest opens, the arms go up or forwards or whatever. Our bodies are more varied, flexible than that. One more time. And then fisherman cast the net. and pushing away, pushing both. One more time. Have the other foot forwards. Starting again with pigeon spreads its wings. See what you can feel through your body in terms of that opening and closing. It's not just in the upper body that you're feeling. Feel what's happening here in the front of your hips, for instance, and your knees. Your ankles. Remember earlier when we were doing swaying in the river, there was that sense of tilting from your ankles. What's happening in your ankles? And then this time changing, so you settle down, and it's as you settle that you make the change. So it's not just, when I talk about settling, pausing, it's not just a complete stopping, a change of pace, I suppose. A good way of thinking of it. And then fisherman cast a net. Pushing away as you come back, feel the way the chest opens a little bit. So that closing is part of the mechanism, if you like, think of it like that, that gives the movement its strength. One more time. Good. Let's do Wind Blows the Willows, Dragonfly Skims the Water. So start with your right foot forwards, and that way you can face what I'm doing and mirror my movements. Again, a lot of the sort of action in the upper part of the body takes place whilst the weight is settling in one leg or another. So start with your weight in the back leg, turn, swing your arms out, go forwards, You begin to turn slightly before you arrive, but the main part of the movement is here as we go in down through the left foot. Wind blows the willows. And then again, if it suits you today, you can begin to raise your toes and your heel. I would recommend turning the front foot out slightly for this. Most of us, I think it makes it easier for the weight to go down. So if we gradually build up towards the step. So in your own time, as you're ready, you can step in. Build up in much the same way as we build up, stretching between heaven and earth. Because what you can do, we won't take any extra steps today, but you can just raise the knee. Be careful, obviously, if you're doing that. And another addition you can make, again very carefully, you raise and you rotate. See how the foot comes up? So you're hooking something up with your foot. But be careful with your hip, with your hip and your knee when you do that. But that's pay attention. Of course, I was talking, not paying attention. Okay. Same thing on the other side. So left foot forwards. Just build this up in your own time. Start with just the basic movement. There's nothing wrong with staying with just this. Don't get into a mentality or anything, well, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. This is a lovely exercise in its own right. And if it suits you better today to take the time just to feel what's going on in this exercise, then do that. I often find that I've overlooked things in exercises because I've been in too much of a hurry to sort of take them further, as it were. Sometimes it's worth just go, oh, maybe I'll just stay with this one. And then if it suits you, beginning to raise your toes and your heel. Stepping in. Just whichever sort of stage suits you today. So rub your hands together. Tap them over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. and your arm. And the side. Lower part of your back. Your hips. Your belly. And then the upper part. I mentioned earlier about balancing the three Dan chains. You watch the tide on the beach, the waves, they don't just keep going, they could creep up and then back and creep up and then back. And sometimes it feels like that with progressing in Tai Chi. You know, I could well believe that in a year's time I'll be just doing this because something has cropped up while I've been doing that. I thought, oh, I'll go right back, and it shines a light on a previous way of doing it or something like that. And so, you know, when I talk about progression, it's important to feel that we do develop. I think that's an important thing and a worthy aim. But it's not always the case of I do this and then add. Sometimes, you know, going back to an exercise that I learned 20, 30 years ago is actually a definite progression. And a really good example of that is this one that I basically forgot about for about 20 years. But when I remembered it and started doing it again, you can see it's now developed into this and so on and so forth. So it isn't necessarily a case of more difficult exercises. In fact, sometimes it's the, you know, you do the more difficult exercise, and the real value of it is that it shines a light on something that I thought I already knew, but obviously didn't. So I suppose, like everything else in Tai Chi, we want a balance between learning new things and more difficult things, and actually changing our appreciation and our understanding of what we actually do already have. So, big hip width apart, sinking down, embrace tiger, return to mountain. And fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you found that interesting, and we'll be back throughout the week, of course. But,
thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
See you next week.
All of you, look
Thanks,
after
Mike.
yourselves.
That was good.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye.
Bye.